Hey guys, Probo1701 here, and today we are going to be ranking Doctor Who by decade. Ranking Doctor Who from the worst decade of Doctor Who to the best decade of Doctor Who. We're leaving out the 2020s since we've really only had Series 12 and the special to go by so early in the decade that I just don't feel like including it yet. So we're going to be looking at the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. So 6 entries on this list, from worst to best. Now, in 6th place, I'm going with the 90s. And I'm going by my personal exposure to Doctor Who and what came out in the 90s, not everything. And I know there are some people in the comments who are going to be in an uproar because there actually was a lot of Doctor Who content that came out in the 90s. You had the VNAs, you had the real-time stuff, you had a lot of the Big Finish stuff starting up and coming out then. I'm pretty sure Dom is going to write me an encyclopedia down in the comments letting me know all of the stuff in the 90s that came out that I'm missing out on. That will take me 15 minutes to read through. I'm well aware of that, which I'm perfectly looking forward to. He gets very excited about his VNAs. I know he loves the VNAs. But I'm going by what I've seen from the 90s, and I am not nearly as well versed in 90s Doctor Who. I've seen the TV movie, I've seen The Curse of Fatal Deaths, and I've seen Dimensions in Time, the 30th anniversary charity event crossover with EastEnders, which is garbage. I love Curse of Fatal Deaths, although to be fair, I really love the first half of Curse of Fatal Deaths, with the second half being I usually just watch the first half, to be fair. And I like the TV movie a lot as well. But I'm not familiar with the other stuff, so just because there's not as much content of it, it kind of ranks at the bottom for me. Moving into 5th place is the 2010s, honestly. It's really hard because I don't really hate any of these decades. It's just ranking them is difficult. The 2010s, I think they started off strong with Series 5. But I think after Series 5, Doctor Who really got into this place where each series kind of became a mixed bag, starting with Series 6. Even Series 5 had some arguable duds in there, but Series 5 is still consistently good. Series 6 is very up and down. I think most of the fandom agrees. Series 7 feels like 2 different series, and both of which have ups and downs. Series 8 has way more downs than ups. Although I'm softening on it because some stories like Robots of Sherwood I appreciate more every time I watch them, and I like Deep Breath more than I originally did. Though I've never hated it, but I actually really like it a lot now. I enjoy Into the Dalek more now, and then of course it has Mummy on the Orient Express and Flatline, which I really like. But it also has several duds in it: Kill the Moon, The Caretaker, Forest of the Night. Series 9. Way more bad than good in Series 9. Series 9 could be the worst, actually. But it has Heaven Sent and the Before the Flood two-parter really kind of helping it a little bit, buoying it a little bit. Series 10 was pretty consistent except for the Extremist trilogy, kind of weighing it down. That and Eaters of Light is garbage, to be honest. And then Series 11 is mostly bad. Well, we won't count Series 12 because it's 2020. Series 11 was mostly bad, though, so... I feel like so much of the 2010s are a mixed bag. There's some great Doctor Who stories in the 2010s, and Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi are great doctors, but there's so much bad stories in that decade that I feel like I feel very confident of my placement here at number 5. Number 4 is the 80s. Now, there was a time where the 80s would have went lower on the list, but I haven't rewatched the 80s and seen more of the 80s, and rewatched a lot of them I haven't watched in a long time. The 80s had some great stories in it. The 80s, I feel like McCoy's era is probably the most underrated. There's so many good stories. It's like when people think of the McCoy era, they think of Tom and the Ronnie. Like that's the whole McCoy era. And it's really not true. It's really not true. I just saw Paradise Towers for the first time recently, and I really enjoyed it. I thought Delta and the Bannermen was decent, edging into good. You guys know I love Dragonfire. I mean, season 24, half of season 24 is absolutely brilliant. with Dragonfire and Paradise Towers. I don't understand why this season is looked at the way it is, except for the fact it's such a radical departure from seasons 22 and 23, which were criticized for being too dark. It's like you can't win with Doctor Who fans sometimes, then and now. Season 25, Remembrance is brilliant. Silver Nemesis is good, but it's just an inferior version of Remembrance. And then you have Happiness Patrol, which is the only one of his I haven't seen. Then you have Greatest Show in the Galaxy, which most people like, even though I don't care for it. But most people like it. It gets rated pretty high on my It's Armageddon list. It was on a lot of people's list. And then, of course, season 26 is one of the best seasons Doctor Who ever put out. All 4 stories are great, aside from Battlefield's crappy incidental music. And then Colin Baker's era. Season 23 is hit or miss, but Mysterious Planet's great. Terror of the Vervoids is good. Ultimate Foe is I just don't really care for Mind Warp, personally. Although it has Brian Blessed, so it gets a few points for that. Davison's era is very hit or miss. I think season 19 is mostly solid, though despite what some people tell me, I still think Kenda sucks. I'd rather watch Time Flight. I like Time Flight way better than Kenda. I don't mean better than Kenda. I mean better than Kenda. Kenda, Time Flight. Not even close. Give me Time Flight any day. But in season 20, I haven't seen all of. I personally think Arc of Infinity is underrated. I like the Black Guardian trilogy, though I'm guessing I find Terminus very forgettable because I can't remember it. I've watched it, but I literally can't remember it. So I'm guessing it's pretty forgettable. I really like it. Excuse me. I was going to say I really like Enlightenment, but apparently my body was like, don't say that. But Enlightenment's really good. I just can't decide which version of Enlightenment I like better. And Maldron Undead I find is alright. I don't think it's super great, but I enjoy it. And I love The Five Doctors, which I think is really good. Season 21, yeah, Warriors of the Deep sucks. Twin Dilemma's not too good either. Although I do actually enjoy the actual story. I just think it's executed badly. But the actual story I like. Just some really, really bad choices they make in the story. It's like the vague idea of the story I like, but all of the crappy details they put in derail it. But then you also have Resurrection of the Daleks and Caves of Androzani, which I really like. So, yeah, I think the 80s is right here. I think the 80s gets a little more crap than it deserves. But again, there's a lot of stories this decade I haven't seen, so taking that into account. This is really hard when I got to 2 and 3. I was really flip-flopping between 2 and 3 on my list. Because I know a lot of people are going to be mad how I place these. But I have a reason for that, which I will get to. Number 3 on the list, I went with the 60s. A lot of the reasons why this is not higher is because I haven't seen so much of Hartnell stuff. I've only seen 8 of Hartnell's stories. That includes the recreation of Mission to the Unknown. And even Troughton, I still haven't seen all of his stuff. I still have Troughton's that I need to watch. So I have a lot of the 60s that aren't complete to me. I've liked most of the Hartnell stuff I've seen, except for the Gunfighters, which I don't like. But the rest of the stuff I've seen of his, I like. I like most of Troughton's that I've seen as well. Matter of fact, I don't think there's any of Troughton's that I've seen I just dislike. But again, I still have several of his to go. I think my least favorite of Troughton's, I'm not sure, maybe the Faceless ones, but I still like the Faceless ones. I think it would have just made a better 4-parter than a 6-parter. Well, probably actually Fury from the Deep was probably my least favorite, but that's completely down to the animation, which I've already beat that point to death, so I'm not going to go into that. But because I still have such a large gap there, I'm ranking it in 3rd. There's still a lot of good stories in the 60s, and I feel like as I see more of the 60s, it may move into 2nd place. At number 2, I do have the 2000s. I do think Eccleston and Tennant's runs are pretty impressive. I mean, really the only mixed bag is Series 2, and Series 2 still has some standout episodes. Series 1 is nearly flawless. Series 3 is nearly flawless. Series 4 is really good, but there's still some episodes I don't care for that tend to be fan favorites, like Midnight and Turn Left. Don't really care for Planet of the Ood, but it's still good. It's just not one I go back to. I'm not a big fan of the Ood. I don't like their character design. But still has a lot of really good stories. I enjoy most of the specials. The only one of the specials I don't really care for is the one most people seem to like, which is Waters of Mars, which I still don't hate, and I have watched probably half a dozen times, so it's not that I dislike it, I just don't like it as much as the others. I really like Planet of the Dead, Next Doctor, and I really enjoy End of Time, actually. So I think, this decade did a lot for Doctor Who. You could argue that Doctor Who is the most popular it's ever been because of the Ninth Doctor and the 10th Doctor's eras. Doctor Who was really huge in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. I'd say through Smith's run, just globally huge, and I think it owes a lot of that to the first 5 series. So I feel like the 2000s deserves some credit because the mid to late 2000s were some of the best Doctor Who, really, I think. And, of course, number 1 is the 70s. I love 70s Doctor Who. We're talking Jon Pertwee and Tom Baker, which are 2 of the best Doctors to ever play the Doctor, or 2 of the best actors to ever play the Doctor. They are both phenomenal. Even though they're very different Doctors, their approach to the character is just gold. I love how each of them performs their role as the character. The writing is so good during most of this era. I know it kind of tapers off a little bit at the end, but I think the writing here for a decade is stronger than it's ever been. Production design, especially through the Hinchcliffe years, is really good. I know the budget kind of got crapped on after that. I do think the Williams era would have been better if the budget hadn't been getting hampered. Good companions. That's another thing. We had so many good companions. I mean, the Unit family's great. Liz is great. Joe is great. Sarah is great. Leela is great. Romana, both the Romanas are good. Well, I really like Romana 1. Romana 2 is but I know a lot of people love Lala. So we have good companions, good stories, good production, and the people running the shows. You have Terrence Dix and Barry Letts together, an amazing combination. And then in the Hinchcliffe era, you have Bob Holmes and Philip Hinchcliffe together. That's a great combination, and really made those 8 seasons just amazing. And then even the Williams era, I think, is really good and has strong stories in it, like City of Death and Shada and Pirate Planet and Horror of Fang Rock and Sunmakers. Just good stuff in there. So I think, just objectively, 70s Doctor Who is probably the best, especially since, unlike the 2000s, which only had half of a decade to work with, 70s Doctor Who pretty much did it the whole time. Again, people might argue the Williams era dropped off a little bit, but I still think the Williams era is good. Maybe not as good, but still good. So, yeah, I got to give it to the 70s. So how would you rank Doctor Who by decade? And what do you think of my list? Let me know down in the comments below. I always enjoy hearing what you guys think. I do have a couple polls up on my Patreon right now that will be running through the end of July. They are open to the public. I do want to mention that. I have one. It's a runoff from my last poll, voting on which classic Doctor I will be doing a review of, because it was a 3-way tie. It's a major review I'm going to do. It's between the 2nd Doctor, the 6th Doctor, and the 7th Doctor. I also have a poll up I just started for which modern Doctor in the Doctor Who I will be doing a review of, and that's between the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th War and Fugitive Doctors. Those are open to the public. Anybody should be allowed to vote in those if I did the poll right. There is a link to that down in the description below to my Patreon if you would like to vote in those polls. And also, if you would like to join and become one of my patrons, I do have different tier levels. The entry-level tier is only $2 a month. If you like what I do and want to support what I do, anyone who joins at any level gets a free video request. And also, don't forget to click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications. I really do want to reach 1,000 subscribers, because when you reach 1,000, it opens up a lot of things in your community. It opens up that community tab so you can leave posts for people, you can post pictures. I could get a lot more involved with the channel when I hit 1,000. So I'm really trying to get to that. So if you're someone who enjoys watching my channel but you haven't actually subscribed yet, go ahead and click that button. Help me out. I promise I appreciate it. Most importantly, though, stay safe out there, and thank you for watching.